Where we got to start, though, grass isn't greener on the other side, according to Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions.
Still
is going to stay just that. He has turned down both Seattle and Washington, the Commanders, and he has said, nay, I will stay in Detroit. And this is a surprise because 37-year-old offensive play caller obviously maximized what the Detroit Lions did this year.
Had all the juice behind him. Had
Absolutely.
The wonder kid kind of tag. Going to be a great head coach. It's very Sean McVayian, Kingsbury. That kind of feel to him.
There was always this kind of question in the rumblings around Ben Johnson of, is he the leader of men that it takes to be a head coach in the NFL?
Which is kind of the difference between McVay and Kingsbury.
He's a young guy, and we say young guy. He's 37 years old.
I mean, as far as head coaches go, dumb young.
He would have been, I think, the third youngest coach in the NFL had he taken that position. But if you look at what Ben Johnson's doing, I actually appreciate we have a young guy who's like, look, I got a good thing here in Detroit. I've got 2 tackles that I have 0 questions about. I've got a quarterback who understands my system, what I need to do. I have got a tight end of the future in Sam Laporta on a rookie deal. I've got a gadget and Jahmyr Gibbs, who is on a rookie deal. I've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, rookie deal still.
Offensive line that's...
You are sitting there in your center, and Frank Ragnow is just a damn warrior. Like, you sit there and you look at all the pieces that he's got, and he's like, hey, we can make another run next year. We're not up against it with the cap. I got a head coach who handles all the mess, and I just sit here, and all I have to do...
I get to dial it up.
...is focus on football. And I think when you look at the grass isn't always greener on the other side, I think there's one person that we can look at and we can say, this is it. That... sometimes being a coordinator, you can get paid a buttload of money.
It's the better job.
And be the best at your craft. Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs. Who went and was the head coach of the New York Giants, and it was a disaster. It did not work out for him. Now he goes back and he's a coordinator, and he is lauded up. He is praised at every turn for being one of the best defensive minds in football. And there is nothing wrong. Are there going to be head coaching opportunities that disappear for Ben Johnson? Maybe. Maybe. But you know what?
It's interesting, some of the stuff that is leaking out about this that we don't typically see leaked out.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why, is because those teams are pissed off.
Like Adam Schefter even said, he had a tweet that said, the asking price was too high for Ben Johnson. Like
basically a know your place.
But think about everything that we laid out. Think about what we just laid out.
You're trying to get him.
He's sitting there and he's going, well, all right, if I go to Washington, which the Commanders were believed to be the front runner to land his services.
So I don't have a quarterback. I've got a wide receiver. I've got some decent guys in the backfield to work with. My offensive line is in shambles. I don't have a ton of draft capital to work with. So why wouldn't you be like, yeah, I want all of the money and I want it guaranteed because this is going to suck.
And oh, by the way, I got to build out a staff and, take the Cowboys for what they are, but they're a really good regular season team.
Sure.
We know that.
Yeah.
We know they're a very good regular season team. The Eagles took a big step back this year, but they are still a talented roster.
Loaded.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense for me, for Ben Johnson, but like I heard Colin and McIntyre going back and forth. And McIntyre, Colin was like, it's the loyalty. And McIntyre was like, there is no loyalty. You jump at what's available for you. Why?
No. And I think we talked about this a couple months ago, like when the first head coaching or firing started happening.
Yeah.
Of, are coaches going to be smarter about what jobs they take and don't take? Yes, there's only 32 of these, blah, blah, blah. But we've seen over the last couple of years, every year a coach or two that everybody's like, oh, he's gone. He's going to be a head coach. And they're just like, no. Because you look at some of these organizations and you're just like, Carolina.
Yeah.
Do I really want to go? They just announced their head coach today. They introduced him, I should say. And it's like, do you want to go work with Tepper? The guy that we just saw throw a drink on a fan and just...
Right.
acting like a giant man-child.
On his fifth head coach since taking over in 2022.
Yeah, it's like, is this really what you want to go deal with?
Yeah.
And I think that there's like this, if you're good, you're good. And yeah, when you've got heat, sometimes you've got to strike. But also, you don't always have to strike. And you're seeing more hesitation. I don't want to say hesitation. I think you're seeing more savviness.
Yeah, more thought put into where you're going and when you're going.
Yeah.
Now, Seattle is an interesting one, though, with Ben Johnson, because
they do have some stuff there.
You do have some pieces. You have offensive line. You have weapons. The quarterback position is a question, but if you can squeeze the most out of Jared Goff, you feel that you might be able to squeeze the most out of Geno Smith. And you have a front office that is stable with John Schneider.
Really well.
Yeah, but is it also Ben Johnson going, look, I want somewhere that, I'm their guy instead of going through the rigmarole and leaving everything up in the air. You go back to Detroit where you don't have to make any of those hires to fill out a staff and keep everybody happy. I, for one, I find it refreshing.
And the Lions, it's now being reported, aren't reworking his deal. So he's just coming back.
See, that is surprising to me.
Right?
Like, maybe you throw a little bit extra money for, a little something for the effort here. But that's also the thing is that we never know how much these guys get paid.
He might be already getting paid a lot.
Because it wasn't a hot name. He was one of those names that everybody was like,
riser.
Hey, look at him last year.
Like McDaniel in Miami. Yeah. Everybody kind of knew the path that was coming out of that. Whether or not Johnson ends up being a head coach, you can still make a lot of money as a really good play caller.
I think what it means for Detroit is, far more like, look, Dan Campbell doesn't have to go and find that guy this year.
Yeah, and this is kind of following up on his post-game press conference of like, we don't know if we're going to get back. I think that was a light admission at the fact that he was there's a good chance at least he was going to lose one coordinator, maybe two.
And take it in these terms right here, okay? Sean McDermott doesn't get over the hump next year.
That job's going to open up and you're going to have Josh Allen.
Okay, Mike McCarthy doesn't get over the hump next year.
You're going to get a job that opens up that has Dak Prescott.
But it's Dallas, it's weapons, it's a great offensive line. You could have that job there. Nick Sirianni is on his last straw. He had to fire his coordinators. With a fun
quarterback and a great roster. What do we think about LaFleur?
Matt LaFleur's an interesting one.
Because I know he bought some good graces. Yeah. But it also felt like that maybe heading towards that divorce before that. And that's an organization where they pride themselves on stability and not changing coaches. And if they go after you, they stick with you, they invest. So you've got organizations that, look, say what you want about Jerry. He's a nutcase in Dallas. He is stuck by coaches regularly long past their sell-by dates. So you can go to these organizations that are more storied, more successful, better funded, more resourceful, more reliable. Even it's insane to say that about the Cowboys, but I am because how long do we want Jason Garrett gone for?
Forever.
Okay, you go down the list of the only coach he had got rid of ahead of time that is the one he shouldn't have, and that was Jimmy.
And then there's one more job in there too that will be attractive. If Matt Eberflus falls on his face in year one with Caleb Williams.
And you have all of the draft capital and you've got all of the flexibility. Now you've got an ownership group that is insanely bad, but you can overcompensate with that by having if Caleb is the quarterback people think he is.
So there are jobs right there that are out in front of you saying, hey, if it's not this cycle.
And every one of them is better than the Commanders.
It is.
Every one of them better than the Commanders.
Yeah, maybe
even the Bears.
Maybe not Seattle, but Brady Henderson was on with Sprague earlier today, and he was talking to him about look, whoever gets hired, a coordinator that has been interviewed for that head coaching job could pop up, and now you're going, oh, okay. Who could that be? Who's already interviewed for the job that may leave their post to come back and be a coordinator in Seattle? I don't know who that could be. I think everybody's default is Dan Quinn's probably sick of the S that he gets in Detroit or Dallas all the time. Yeah. And so maybe he's just like, yep, deuces, and he joins the staff. But now you look at, all right, Washington and Seattle are open. You have three coaches that are out there. You have Mike McDonald, the defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens, who is a hot name.
36 years old.
Aaron Glenn apparently is going to interview with the Commanders because the Commanders went to Detroit to interview Ben Johnson.
Yeah. And they found out mid-flight that he's like, nah, I'm good.
So they're going to interview Aaron Glenn, the DC in Detroit.
Look at the in-flight Wi-Fi phone calls.
Look at that. It can happen.
Yeah.
It can happen for the low price
of $9,000.
But you have, so Mike McDonald, you got Aaron Glenn, and then you have the two former head coaches that are still out there and lingering. Mike Vrabel is out there, and Bill Belichick is out there. And maybe does this start...
How Vrabel is still out there, I have no bleeping idea.
Does this start maybe DC going, maybe we do kick the tires on Bill Belichick? You know, if you're Seattle, I don't know why you're not chomping at the bit to hire Mike Vrabel. Unless you want an offensive coach. But all signs have not really pointed that direction because you would exclusively interview offensive minds in that case, right?
I don't, like... To me, Vrabel seems like that's a match made in heaven. Like how he operates and what we know about him and how Pete operated. Like it's like maybe the organization is just look. When you have a players coach, you go to the militant guy. If you have the militant guy, you go to the players coach. Like there's just you like to change things up, and maybe there's just too much similarity.
Here's a good text on the Vancouver Ford text line. It could be possible that he was a bad interviewer, and Johnson was passed on head coach material too. Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
wouldn't be the
look,
first time.
that was what nobody wanted to say about Eric Bieniemy because of all the success the Chiefs had on the field, but apparently his interviews were not good.
Yeah, guys just did not, as a dude, they didn't like him.
And Ben Johnson could fall into that category as well because that is kind of like the rumblings where is he the leader of men? And that would lead you to believe not necessarily the best interview.
Well, it was the same stuff with Josh McDaniels, and yet he kept getting jobs.
Yeah.
That was surprising.
And turning them down.
Yeah.
Or maybe he is a good interview. I don't know. I don't know. Or maybe he just took jobs that nobody else wanted.
Wow.
Well,
the Patriots? God.
As an offensive coordinator.
I had to.
No, but it didn't work.
Yeah,
you didn't land it because the Raiders hired him as a head coach. The Broncos hired him as a head coach. Hell, the Indianapolis Colts hired him as a head coach, and he turned around and said, no. All right, but Ben Johnson is staying. I think it's huge for Detroit. I'm buying Detroit stock even more than I was before. Now that he's going to be returning to the Lions for one more year, and now the Motor City Kitties, it's another happy story on a bad week for the Lions.